He changed the sound of a generation, but he was never the face of that age. As other people got the attention, he worked behind the glass to make the music's soul. And from quiet offices to world stages, Benny Andersson saw one of pop music's most famous bands rise, fall apart, and rise again. But the story he's just now telling isn't about sequins or dance balls. It's about being tired, feeling bad about broken relationships, and the painful silence that followed the praise. People have been guessing about Benny's truth for decades, but it's deeper, sadder, and more telling than anyone thought. Putting together a sound kingdom, Benny Andersson was building what would become one of pop music's most lasting achievements, long before anyone danced to Dancing Queen or cried to The Winter Takes It All. Benny was born on December 16, 1946, in the Vasisten neighborhood of Stockholm. He grew up in a working-class family where music was more of a custom than a way to make a living. His father, a civil engineer, and grandpa, a musician who taught Benny how to play the accordion when he was 6 years old. That simple instrument would spark in him a love of rhythm and harmony that would last a lifetime. He wasn't driven by a need to be seen like many of his friends who wanted to be famous. It was more interesting to him to figure out how music worked, from Bach's mathematical structure to the real stories in Swedish folk songs. He learned to play the piano by ear and could copy songs after only hearing them a few times. By the time he was 10, he was already playing for family events and school concerts. He wasn't known for being a showman, but for being naturally sensitive to tone and feeling. Benny joined the Swedish rock band Hepstars in 1964 when he was only 18. They would go on to be known as the Swedish Beatles. When he got there, their sound got better almost right away. Hits like Sunny Girl and Wedding put the group at the top of the Swedish lists. Music that Benny wrote himself. These early wins not only showed that he could write catchy melodies, but they also helped him get better at arranging music in the studio and performing live. He quickly became known as the singing genius of the band. And in the background, he learned about the business and technical sides of the music business. Then came a very important night in 1966. Benny met Bija Ron Ulvaeus while they were both playing at a party for friends they both had. Bija Ron, who was in the folk, pop band Hootenanny Singers, loved harmony, melody, and small details just as much as Benny did. When they got together to jam that night, they became instant musical friends. Over the next few years, they started writing songs together. They tried out different styles and structures, and even wrote songs for other Swedish acts. Not only did they respect each other, but they also worked well together, because they were great opposites. Benny wrote the sad music, and Bija Ron wrote the funny lyrics. As early as the 1970s, Benny and Bija Ron were not only writing songs together, but they were also living together with two other artists, Annifred Frida Lindstad and Agnetha F.D. Lotskog, a Swedish solo singer who is at the top of the charts. A jazz singer who now sings pop music and has a strong alto voice. They started making music together as Bija Ren and Benny, Agnetha and Annifred, which is a long name. It had a bad name, but the energy was great. They tried to win the Swedish call for Eurovision in 1973 but failed. They came back the next year with Waterloo, Not Giving Up, a glam pop hit that won the Eurovision Song Contest in 1974 and made them famous all over the world right away. Soon after, they changed their name to something easier to remember, a BBA, which is an acronym of their first names. At that point, Benny was no longer just a pop singer. He was a creator of sound. He carefully layered instruments and put voice harmonies in the right places for each song, like a painter would, having fun with synthesizers long before it was cool to do so. He was known for being very patient and meticulous in the studio, where he would often work on the same melody for days on end until it felt emotionally right. He wasn't interested in what everyone else had. The things that would never change interested him. Even though Agneta and Frida looked stunning in matching jumpsuits and Jorn wrote smart, sad lyrics, Benny was the one who put the feelings behind ABBA's music. His signature style was a mix of light and dark, with a Swedish melancholia hidden in music. This duality was present in songs like Knowing Me, Knowing You, and Fernando. Happiness on the outside, sadness inside. That was a gift from Benny. Not just to pop music, but to generations of people who heard ABBA's songs and felt something deeper in them. Really, Benny Andersson wasn't just making songs, he was making a country, and each chord, silence, and note was important. And even though the attention was often on someone else, ABBA's sound was clearly his. Falling apart while climbing higher. For most of the 1970s, ABBA was on a wave of success that could not be stopped. But as the band became more popular, things started to fall apart behind closed doors. It didn't happen all of a sudden. It was quiet and slow, like how time wears down a house instead of fire destroying it. When Jorn and Agnetha split up in 1979, there was the first crack. After a very hard break, the band tried to keep going with their work. The band was making their album Super Trooper at the time. There was a new heavy tone to the sessions, but the songs still had their signature finish. After 2 years, Benny and Frida did the same thing. Someone once said that their relationship was hot and wonderful for both of them, a real musical love story. They came together through music before anything else when they met in 1969, a long time before ABBA. In an interview in 1975, Frida said that Benny knew her better than anyone else. But sometimes what they learned in the studio didn't work out in real life. Benny was very good at the studio because he was always trying to be great, but at home he wasn't as open with his feelings. Frida, who was outspoken and emotional, could feel that someone was leaving. Around 1981, Benny stated that he was in love with Mona Nerklitz. He met the TV producer during a show special. Even though he told Frida the truth, it was too late. Even though the split was professional and quiet, it left a deep mark on the band's sound. The next and final studio record, The Visitors, which came out that same year, showed how cold things were getting emotionally. There was a lot of pain in songs like When All Is Said and Done and Slipping Through My Fingers. The shine was wearing off, and even though the band would play for another year, something important had already gone. Adding to the quiet we all felt, there were no shocking news about ABBA's breakup for more than 40 years. Instead, there was a deafening silence. ABBA didn't end with a farewell tour, a breakup news conference, or one last performance meant to make people feel better. Gone Away, Under Attack, their last official song, came out in December 1982. It didn't have as much of an effect as their other hits. There wasn't a follow-up record, a world tour, or a curtain call. Instead, there was a slow fade into the background of rumors and fan theories that would last for decades. Their disappearance left a hole, which was filled with a lot of questions. Why did they stop when things were going so well? Did money drive them apart? Was it a personal problem? Conflict that leads to creativity. For years, none of the band members would give a clear reason. Interviews were still vague. The word hiatus was used a lot, and they stopped going public very often, and were very nice when they did. ABBA was like a story that got stuck in time. They were the perfect pop group that just disappeared without a trace. In November 2024, that changed. Benny Andersson agreed to talk to The Guardian. He has been known for a long time to be quiet and think about himself. He also avoids personal press. He didn't show up with a prepared story. There was no statement written by a publicist or retouched PR spin. Benny did something unusual instead. He told the truth straight out. He agreed that we were tired. A lot of marriages were ending. The music was beginning to sound strange. We had to stop to keep ourselves alive. That one simple, unfeeling comment hurt more than any incident ever could. In a few words, Benny confirmed what many fans had thought for a long time. The split wasn't because of betrayal or a disagreement over art. It came from being emotionally drained. The group was worn out from years of touring, recording, and pretending to be happy while their personal lives fell apart behind the scenes. Not in a dramatic, quiet, or fatal way. Then, in April 2025, Benny did a follow-up interview with Billboard that went into even more detail. He said that the last 2 years of the band's career, 1981 and 1982, were just dull workdays. What used to be a lively exchange of ideas had become a habit. He and Bjorn were still writing, but it wasn't as fun or important to them. The recording time was cut down, and the songs came out more slowly. It felt like work instead of a joy in everything. What was even more striking was how Benny talked about the group's choice to stop. He didn't say it was a fail. He didn't make it sound romantic. He said it was going to fall apart eventually. He said it could no longer be done. Not to each other or to ourselves. We couldn't keep it up. Not only did this recognition shed light, it also helped heal. Fans had heard for decades that ABBA's last records, like The Visitors, were different, more personal, and sad. Some songs, like One of Us, like an angel passing through my room, and The Day Before You Came, didn't just sound sad, they were down. There was a weight to the words and arrangements that showed there was more going on than just following pop trends. People felt it, even if they couldn't put their finger on it. That feeling was confirmed by Benny's statement. The pain, the feeling that something was breaking apart beneath the smooth surface, wasn't something that was thought. It was real. It's interesting that none of Benny's statements were negative. He didn't blame Bjorn. Like Agnetha or Frida, he talked about the band's end as if it were a natural end, like a beautiful machine that had done its job. He said that we had done all that we could. To be honest, we had nothing left in us. Fans got the peace of mind they didn't know they needed. No longer was the mystery a secret. There was a reason for the silence, and most importantly, the pain that had been ringing through ABBA's last songs now had a name: exhaustion, mental collapse, and the quiet need to leave. Frida's trip through grief and royalty. After ABBA quietly broke up, Frida set out on a trip that no one really saw coming. Since she married Prince Heinrich Rousseau, Royce of Ploen, in 1992, she is now a member of European royalty. People in the Swedish press were crazy about the woman. They wanted to know how she could be living in a castle in Switzerland and going to galas and dinners. As a princess, though, life wasn't quite what it seemed like. Frida had a hard time with how rigid aristocratic standards were. She wasn't able to use the spontaneity and feeling that made her great as a performer in the structured world of royalty. Then she felt the worst sadness of her life. Anne-Lisa Lotta, her daughter, died in a car crash in New York in 1998. She was only 30 years old. The loss was terrible. The woman who used to sing for millions of people now hid away in her quiet home near Lake Geneva to deal with her sadness. Even though she was a princess and had a famous past, the lack of her daughter made her feel empty. Still, Benny was the one who came back at that time. No matter how hard he tried, they had a history that no one else could understand. And the quiet time they spent together again brought them comfort. As much as they loved the good old days, they knew something that only two people who had seen everything fall apart could really understand. Frida used to need to be the center of attention to feel seen. But now she was happy, just being remembered by someone who had never met her before. Going back without sorrow. In 2018, something terrible happened after decades of silence. ABBA got back together to record 2 new songs. People in the music business were shocked by the news. Not only did it break a 36-year silence, but it also started ABBA Voyage, one of the biggest projects in the history of music. By 2021, Benny and Jorn had written and recorded a full-length studio album with the same name. Benny was in charge of all the recording. It was the way they performed, not the song, that changed everything. ABBA Voyage wasn't like most concerts. The whole thing was done online. Using motion capture and avatar technology, Benny and his team recreated the band from 1979. They then performed live with a 10-piece band at a London venue that was built just for them. It's amazing how well the show did. Fans from more than 140 countries have bought more than 1.3 million tickets since it opened in May 2022. The digital models didn't just look like people, they went beyond what people expected. Benny, who was always the master craftsman, was in charge of every aspect of the sound design and insisted that the performance be true to life, accurate in terms of feeling, and technically perfect. Even more amazing is the fact that the band turned down a $1 billion offer for a live tour. They didn't want to get high again. Instead, they changed what performance meant to them. Like Benny, the images could be felt without being seen. As it always had, the music spoke for them. They let the music speak the truth. At age 78, Benny Andersson can't hide behind ideal chords or studio walls anymore. In recent appearances, he's been slowly letting go of decades of emotional control. He has said that singing was his way of getting away. He wrote it because he didn't know how to talk about pain. He said that I don't give my best lines to people who need to hear them, but to songs. That one easy, honest line changes everything we thought we knew. Benny wasn't cold, he was scared. They were afraid to face the feelings that were hidden beneath every love song, breakup ballad, and hit that hid sadness. And that fear, that quiet, is what broke the band apart from the inside. Not drama or betrayal, just weakness. The kind of human weakness that success never taught them how to deal with. But there's beauty in how honest he is, because Benny is finally putting these feelings to rest by saying them out loud, which is something ABBA never did. He's telling us that it was never about being perfect. It was always about staying alive. They didn't escape their pain with music. It was how they got through it. Maybe that's why the songs are still around. They were never perfect dreams. They were real pieces of 4 people who were trying to hold themselves together. The quiet man at the piano has finally let us in after all these years. 1. What do you think ABBA's music would have been like if they had written about their feelings instead of singing about them? Share your thoughts below. This story may have moved you. Please like, share, and subscribe for more moving songs.